Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Hi there. Welcome to tuning into this book every day. This audio installment brings you Are What You Risk. The first part, The Gray Rhino, debuted in 2016 with a subtitle, How to Recognize and Act on the Obvious Dangers We Ignore. The second part was published in 2021, titled The New Art and Science of Navigating an Uncertain World. I've previously delved into the first part, and today, I'm here to discuss, You Are What You Risk, with you. Speaking of, the gray rhino, many minds conjure not only a gray, solitary rhinoceros but perhaps also a black swan. Over the years, the gray rhino has often been mentioned in the same breath as Taleb's concept of the black swan. The former denotes high probability, hugely impactful potential crises we overlook. The latter refers to low probability, unpredictable sudden risks. Examples like the subprime crisis, an inevitable fallout due to excessive financial leveraging and fragile credit systems, fall into the gray rhino category, while the hijacked planes striking the World Trade Center, the globally shocking 9/11 event, fall under the black swan. From a conceptual standpoint, these two vividly depicted risk animals have embedded themselves in the public consciousness, encapsulating myriad meanings we aim to communicate, much like IPs. Employing animal imagery to aid in comprehending a complex world is a tactic that resonates, applicable to both children and adults alike. The emergence of the Gray Rhino series illustrates the allure of this mindset concept. Some have remarked that the success of the first part of The Gray Rhino, incessantly warning us to pay attention to the looming, gigantic yet potentially charging rhinoceros, didn't really articulate profound truths. However, the success of the gray rhino lies in poking at the common weaknesses of nations, organizations, and individuals, the tendency to turn a blind eye, remain indifferent, and be complacent in the face of impending or ever-present major crises. This isn't due to ignorance or unawareness but because we're all ordinary humans. This resonance with human nature is a creation shared by a wide readership and the author, isn't it? So, what does You Are What You Risk add to this narrative? The transition from The Gray Rhino to You Are What You Risk is rooted in a question. That is, despite the author's fervent efforts to make people confront that gray rhino, she discovered that people across different parts of the world actually hold significantly varied attitudes toward it. Why is this so? This indicates that risk isn't merely an economic or cognitive issue, it also embodies cultural, societal, and psychological elements. Sensitivity to risk and risk preferences vary greatly among different countries and individuals. Even personal subjective factors like values and life attitudes significantly influence their perception of and response to risks. With that said, the trajectory of You Are What You Risk becomes apparent. It's not merely an economic treatise but an exploration from economic issues to the study of human behavior, extending from macro policies and business spheres to the realm of personal daily life. Because understanding the human factors and personality differences behind risks is crucial for us to comprehensively grasp and navigate risks. It must be said that oftentimes, the fusion of economics with disciplines like sociology, psychology, and anthropology becomes an essential transformation. For instance, while it's commonly understood that business thrives on strategy, it wasn't until institutional economics delved into the societal customs, cultural environments, and other factors behind transactions that economics evolved beyond just economic problems, gaining invaluable depth. The author of this book is Michele Wucker, an American economist, author, and policy analyst fascinated by crisis prediction and risk management. Wucker is the originator of the gray rhino concept, a term that influenced global financial markets, influencing government decisions and business strategies worldwide. Holding multiple positions, she has leadership roles in the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, the International Institute for Strategic Studies in New York, and serves in leading capacities for the International Finance Review. She's been honored with distinctions like the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader and the Guggenheim Fellowship. Today, our exploration revolves around the primary ideas behind the author's creation of this book, layer by layer, each bringing you closer to your relationship with risk. Layer 1, Reassessing Risk. Risk is far more complex than we imagine. Layer 2, Risk Personality, Reevaluating ourselves from the perspective of risk. Layer 3, RiskLiteracy, how to equip ourselves with risk thinking, dancing with risk in an uncertain world. Alright, let's delve into the first layer, reassessing risk. In The Black Swan, Taleb suggests that the world is driven by extreme, unknown, and highly improbable events. A handful of black swan events almost explain everything happening in this world, from the triumphs of ideas and religions to historical transformations and our personal lives. Wucker, on the other hand, states that behind every black swan, there's a gray rhino. For instance, before the gray rhino concept emerged, the subprime crisis was considered a black swan. However, the vulnerability of the American credit system had shown signs years before. In the event of a plane crash, there would likely have been 300 near misses and 1,000 hidden risks, the Hein rule. If someone collapses suddenly, it's likely their body has been struggling with an unhealthy lifestyle for years, issuing warnings continuously. Often, risks are traceable and sometimes even obvious. In other words, without actively seeking a black swan, our lives are filled with gray rhinos. What's intriguing is that the gray rhino is nearby for everyone. Yet, some people actively embrace it while others turn away, deliberately avoiding it. Some prepare psychologically before it charges, while others flee in panic until it knocks them over. Most people never consider whether tomorrow or an accident will come first, but some young individuals have their wills prepared. What's even more interesting is that some individuals are highly proactive and pragmatic in dealing with certain risks while remaining indifferent or even self-destructive in other aspects. Perhaps you've seen examples around you, those who take the most supplements but order the most takeout, or those who use the most expensive face masks but pull the latest all-nighters. These contradictory and puzzling behaviors once puzzled the author, who studies risk. She realized that how people handle their relationship with risk largely depends on their inherent personalities, experiences, and the cultural environment they inhabit. In essence, risk doesn't just involve rational assessment and calculation, it's also an emotional response and even a cultural phenomenon. Accurately distinguishing between sensation and reality is difficult. We're not adept at differentiating between future outcomes and our present intuitions. Therefore, when we discuss risk, relying solely on reasoning essentially doesn't suffice to navigate life well. Regarding this phenomenon, the author sketches more facets of risk, transcending rational tools to enter the realm of social construction. The writing style of this book exhibits a clear columnist and personal touch, circling around a core concept, weaving numerous examples and stories into a cohesive narrative. Some readers may not be accustomed to this essayistic style of argumentation. I've organized it into three aspects: rationality, emotions, and instincts, to share with you. Firstly, risk reflects human rational evolution. The term risk in Western languages can be traced back to Persian Arabic origins, related to military and nautical terminology. Later, it became integrated into Byzantine Greek, eventually representing opportunity, danger, and destiny. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the meanings conveyed by the term risk across European languages corresponded somewhat to bold exploration, discovering new routes and continents, implying a positive connotation. For example, in medieval High German, it denoted courage, undertaking, hope, and economic success. In modern usage, risk gained meanings related to livelihood or sustenance. I describe the Western etymology of risk not to hand you a book bag but to uncover an important clue. Human cognition of risk in the past and present indicates a revolutionary leap in risk control. In classical times, risk described potential threats, while in the Middle Ages, it also signified opportunities. In recent times, humans developed theories of risk calculation, control, and hedging through methods like mathematical probability analysis. Risk has always described the relationship between humans and uncertainty, but what was once an immeasurable mystery from the past has now become something humans can measure and use rationally. This is the broad path of human cognitive advancement regarding risk. Hence, when our ancestors faced unknown events and tried to avoid risks through divination, sacrifices, and worship, modern humans no longer rely on divine protection but have learned to control risk through man-made systems like law, finance, trade, international politics, big data, etc. Risk has become the backdrop of the modern economy, a measurable uncertainty that people formally discuss, price, and trade. In the business world, those truly engaged in the game even regard risk as an asset to be advocated. In the ordinary person's view, risk decisions are binary. For instance, if a weather forecast predicts a 30% chance of rain, one either carries an umbrella or doesn't. If the stock market might rise, one either invests or doesn't. However, in the eyes of risk professionals, risk isn't this flattened dichotomy of black and white. They see a range of probabilities and consider corresponding combined strategies within this vast gray area. In summary, modern conceptions of risk have evolved into a rational thinking that emphasizes human will. However, assuming risk is objectively measurable would be very one-sided. Let's move on to discuss the second aspect of risk, its strong subjective nature. Firstly, risk is related to beliefs and values. Humans have many principles to guide and determine which risks are worth taking and which aren't. In other words, the logic behind why and what risks we take is tied to what we value. Those who are cautious, advocating safety, and those who ardently pursue ideologies are essentially living in two different worlds. Religious systems also play a guiding role when humans face uncertainty. Moral assumptions surrounding risk occupy a core position in economic and social operations. For instance, Max Weber found that Protestant ethics were crucial beliefs underlying the development of capitalism, and the adventurous culture of sailing on the Mayflower and discovering new continents was the work of Protestants. Secondly, risk is also related to emotions and intentions. The more people perceive themselves as willingly accepting risk, the more risk they can tolerate. If people are highly emotional and have a feeling of invincibility, their aversion to loss is lower, and consequently, they're willing to take greater risks. In essence, the sensitivity of individuals to risk is related to their perceived voluntariness and controllability. Young people usually have more adventurous spirits than their elders because their emotional and confident states support a higher risk preference. Just as philosopher Sven Hansen said, some people believe that risk is objective and determined by physical facts, while others believe that risk is a social construct independent of physical facts. Risk is carried by facts and values. It contains both objective and subjective elements. Perception of risk isn't solely regulated by the human brain, it's also influenced by bodily functions. Thus, risk has a third aspect, its neurobiological expression. Do you know these interesting phenomena? Eating spicy food raises a person's risk tolerance. Elements like music, lighting, temperature, oxygen content in a room, and subtle scents all affect people's responses to risk to varying degrees. For instance, the sense of smell is connected to parts of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, affecting a person's emotions and stress levels. Some scents can lower blood pressure and heart rate, soothing emotions, while others have the opposite effect, influencing a person's risk decisions. Not to mention the impact of stress, fatigue, and hunger levels on a person's risk decisions. When glucose levels decrease in our brains, our self-control weakens, and our judgment of risk diminishes. These biological rules aren't just theories, they're actually applied in places like casinos and shopping malls. John Coates, a neurobiologist who was once a trader, pointed out in his book, The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, our brains often notice risk before we consciously acknowledge it. This is our body's instinctive reaction to risk. When the market fluctuates and trade results become uncontrollable, a trader's stress hormones also soar. In fact, the human nervous system undergoes a series of complex chain reactions in response to perceived risks. The hypothalamus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, adrenaline, cortisol, serotonin, dopamine, and various neurotransmitters and hormones all busily function in the storm triggered by risk. In summarizing these aspects, we can thread the three dimensions of risk together, each corresponding to different parts of the human brain responsible for management, emotions, and instincts. The coexistence of these three dimensions more holistically reflects human cognition and response to risk. Next, let's dive into the second layer, risk personality, to reevaluate ourselves from the perspective of risk. This is also the core content of the book, You Are What You Risk. Many people might recall the cover of The Gray Rhino, which features a prominent rhinoceros. The cover of You Are What You Risk displays a fingerprint. This is because the author introduces a new crucial concept in this book, the risk fingerprint. What does risk fingerprint mean? Simply put, a fingerprint can identify every individual in the world. It's a unique marker for each person. Not only detectives and forensic experts rely on this, but in our daily lives, it's common, clocking in at work, using fingerprint recognition, starting a computer, fingerprint access, unlocking a phone using fingerprints, even having a smart lock at home, all require fingerprints. In essence, a fingerprint contains enough biological information to distinguish one person from another, conveying to the world, you are you, not someone else. Wucker coined the term risk fingerprint to urgently express that every individual's unique personality traits when facing risk also communicate to the world who you are. At the beginning of the book, the author recounts the legendary adventure of an American elderly lady, Annie Edson Taylor, on her 63rd birthday, sat in a custom-made white oak barrel and successfully traversed the Niagara Falls. Despite many warriors following her over a century, not everyone emerged unscathed like her. Many aspire to fame, yet few dare to take the leap she did. What drove this lady to accomplish such a feat? In fact, Taylor's life had numerous instances of risking herself, and it was her societal background in the Gilded Age and unique personal life experiences that led to her incredible actions. Taylor stands as an extreme example. She declared her name to the world through extreme challenges. What if we substitute that iconic waterfall with other risks? Whether it's the stock market, entrepreneurship, changing jobs, competitions, courtship, or any event requiring strategy and courage, just like Taylor, every risk we're willing to take and our performance on the risk stage communicate to the world the kind of person we are. Even if we don't place ourselves in those crazy or daring moments, or aren't members of risk-related professions like war correspondents, rescue team leaders, stunt performers, or bomb disposal experts, every significant and trivial aspect of our daily lives reflects our risk personality. For instance, whether you consistently pay bills ahead of time or frequently receive overdue notices, whether you usually allow ample time to catch a flight or habitually arrive at the boarding gate just as it's closing, whether you earnestly seek a partner or suddenly feel the pain of personal issues, whether you plan ahead for career advancements or confront a midlife crisis unexpectedly, whether you keep health checkup appointments or only go to the hospital when you fall ill. A person's career, finances, health, intimate relationships, and social interactions all relate to their attitude towards risk. Different individuals handle uncertainty in completely different ways. Your life status depends on your risk attitude, and your life, to a significant extent, is shaped by choices made when facing risks. The author broadens the concept of risk from the business domain to everyone's daily life, using risk personality as a window to observe people's life processes. It's often said, character is destiny, and therefore, risk personality, every individual's attitude, preferences, and resilience toward risk, truly defines their fate. When we extrapolate the personal level, risk personality, back to the business level concept of risk, interesting occurrences transpire. Many times, whether a company can stand the test of time, or an investment can endure, is less about business models, industry competition, or economic environments, and more about the performance of the founder or CEO in risk decision-making. Someone inclined toward high-risk behaviors in their personal life, speeding, infidelity, domestic violence, is likely to encounter problems in significant business decisions. Experienced boards of directors or investors pay attention to the personal risk-taking behaviors of founders or CEOs, observing the unique imprints left by their risk fingerprints. The differences in people's risk personalities are determined by some inherent factors and some environmental factors. For instance, from a neurobiological perspective, the X and Y chromosomes have already encoded your risk fingerprint before you were born. Men are generally more likely to engage in high-risk bets due to gender hormones like testosterone that induce irrational excitement. Moreover, genetic variations in hormone receptor genes determine a person's inclination toward risk. Individuals with lower sensitivity to dopamine due to genetic factors may need more risk stimuli to experience the same pleasure. Environmental factors reflect a person's upbringing and the social culture they inhabit. Your risk fingerprint bears the stamp of your original family. Most people's risk patterns have shadows of their parents. Even if children go against their parents' conservative ways, choosing an unconventional path, it's still a form of reverse imitation based on parental influence. An individual's risk fingerprint, when magnified, also reflects information about the people around them. Because the attitudes and behaviors of those around them toward risk, along with the pressures or expectations they impart, also influence this person's relationship with risk. This principle extends to their organization, community, and society. People from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds exhibit starkly different attitudes toward risk. When evaluating international perceptions and responses to economic upheavals, climate change, food safety, and crises, national factors should also be considered. Wucker's primary work revolves around studying the world economy, specifically crisis management. She's interviewed people from many countries on risk issues. In today's world termed the risk society, countries perceive and respond differently to crises like economic volatility, climate change, and food safety. Even her series of books, including The Grey Rhino, receives different treatment in different countries. It became a bestseller in China, surpassing its popularity in Europe and America. The author believes that the most meaningful explanation for this phenomenon is whether the topic of risk articulates a thinking style already existing in people's minds in a particular country. Overall, the author believes that Asians and Latin Americans possess a stronger risk awareness compared to Westerners. If Greece had a higher sensitivity to risk, they wouldn't have been caught off guard by the Grey Rhino in the sovereign debt crisis. If the United States didn't have a culture of natural-born adventurers, people wouldn't have continued to inflate the bubble while witnessing the outbreak of a financial crisis. Understanding one's hidden and unique causes behind everyday behaviors through the risk fingerprint can also help enhance what is termed risk empathy, looking at risk issues from another person's perspective. From an individual's risk fingerprint, one can glean their hopes and fears, endurance, and motivations. This can prompt more valuable conversations on risk issues with others, even facilitating cross-organizational and cross-cultural communication. Alright, having covered the core concept of risk fingerprint, let's dive into the third layer, risk literacy. How individuals and organizations tango with risk. The subtitle of this book is, The New Art and Science of Navigating an Uncertain World. Yes, the world doesn't always comply with our expectations of control. Those with a modern mindset embrace walking hand in hand with risk as a life skill. This is about knowledge preceding action, a fusion of knowing and doing. Confronting numerous gray rhinos in our careers and lives crucially hinges on self-awareness. It's a state of self-awareness where through continual self-exploration, you gain a profound insight into your risk persona. You increasingly identify the most significant gray rhinos around you and respond to them appropriately. The book encapsulates this idea. The nature of risk changes the moment we grasp it, akin to quantum mechanics. Because the clearer our perception of risk, the more control we exert over it. It distinguishes between actively versus passively encountering risk as entirely different states. For instance, facing the inevitable aging and mortality, some craft a robust self-awareness even in their prime years by outlining and fulfilling a list of final wishes, culminating in a remarkable life. Risk is omnipresent and doesn't vanish due to our fears. What we can control is ourselves. In Chinese, it's about seeking within oneself. Once we instill a sense of purpose and value towards risk within, we liberate ourselves from fear. Candidly acknowledging our vulnerabilities might lead to higher probabilities of success. Contrary to the belief of adrenaline junkies, many extreme athletes are goal-driven, possessing strong self-awareness, rigorously adhering to structured risk management plans. Risk, this invisible web in the human world, is perceived differently by different individuals. Some turn pale at the mention of risk while others regard it as an asset, even a privilege. The appearance of risk changes with people's perspectives, altering the logic behind their choices. If one actively confronts risk, short-selling entities profit in market downturns. Ordinary individuals can similarly position themselves near opportunities through timing, location, career choices, waiting for changes. Contrary to plain intuition, the biggest risk might be avoiding change, stagnation. Just like in the survivor's game, the worst strategy often involves retreating, assuming hiding in one place guarantees survival. Reverting to essence, from this lexicon system revolving around risk, the most memorable term to absorb is risk fingerprint. Reflect on which innate and acquired factors influence our risk awareness and decisions. Much like the author often mentions her grandparents who, at their passing in their 90s, had arranged nearly everything themselves, except for the day of departure. From pre-carved tombstones to eulogies, even the menu for their funeral luncheon. Compared to a hasty exit, this astonishingly positive attitude toward life's gigantic gray rhinos profoundly inspired the author's relationship with risk. Alright, the core content of You Are What You Risk in this book is unpacked for you. Let's recap. This book aims to convey 3 values to the reader: refreshing risk cognition, understanding risk fingerprints, and enhancing risk literacy. Risk, as a core concept shaping the modern society, is far more intricate than imagined. How humans handle their relationship with it signifies a revolutionary leap in human risk cognition, whether they pray for divine favor or grasp it in their own hands. Risk perfectly reflects human rational awakening yet bears strong subjective shades. Beliefs, values, emotions, desires all influence one's perception and preferences regarding risk. Even from the perspective of neurobiology, the neurochemicals and hormones related to instincts within the human body influence responses and decision-making concerning risk. Thus, risk is a highly composite concept, containing both rationality and mirroring emotions and instincts. Many times, how you perceive and deal with risk signifies who you are. We always make risk choices based on our unique risk personas, and these choices, in turn, shape us. An individual's innate disposition interacts with their nurturing environment and life experiences, creating their unique risk fingerprint. In other words, the risk fingerprint records the journey one has taken, the people and events encountered, revealing a person's hopes and fears, perseverance, and motivations. Often, understanding one's or someone else's risk persona allows a deeper understanding of the human factors behind those risk decisions. Risk isn't something beyond control, it has a core certainty surrounded by uncertainty. Just as death is inevitable, it's not risk but a certainty. The gray rhinos inherently present in our lives are far more numerous than rare black swans. How we deal with our relationship with gray rhinos hinges on our self-awareness and risk attitudes. Much like quantum mechanics, the nature of risk changes the moment we grasp it. Once our inner selves develop a sense of purpose and value towards risk, we emancipate ourselves from fear. As Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Alright, today, this book is unpacked for you. Let's remember, this book seeks to deliver 3 values: refreshing risk cognition, understanding risk fingerprints, and enhancing risk literacy. Risk, as a core concept shaping the modern society, is far more intricate than imagined. How humans handle their relationship with it signifies a revolutionary leap in human risk cognition, whether they pray for divine favor or grasp it in their own hands. Risk perfectly reflects human rational awakening yet bears strong subjective shades. Beliefs, values, emotions, desires all influence one's perception and preferences regarding risk. Even from the perspective of neurobiology, the neurochemicals and hormones related to instincts within the human body influence responses and decision-making concerning risk. Thus, risk is a highly composite concept, containing both rationality and mirroring emotions and instincts. Many times, how you perceive and deal with risk signifies who you are. We always make risk choices based on our unique risk personas, and these choices, in turn, shape us. An individual's innate disposition interacts with their nurturing environment and life experiences, creating their unique risk fingerprint. In other words, the risk fingerprint records the journey one has taken, the people and events encountered, revealing a person's hopes and fears, perseverance, and motivations. Often, understanding one's or someone else's risk persona allows a deeper understanding of the human factors behind those risk decisions. Risk isn't something beyond control, it has a core certainty surrounded by uncertainty. Just as death is inevitable, it's not risk but a certainty. The gray rhinos inherently present in our lives are far more numerous than rare black swans. How we deal with our relationship with gray rhinos hinges on our self-awareness and risk attitudes. Much like quantum mechanics, the nature of risk changes the moment we grasp it. Once our inner selves develop a sense of purpose and value towards risk, we emancipate ourselves from fear. As Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Alright, today, this book is unpacked for you. Congratulations, you've completed another book. Thank you all for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with action, achieve our financial goals, and create a better future together. Thank you all, goodbye.